Well, thank you. Delighted to come out from Maine. Flew out yesterday. I don't get out of Maine very often, and I run our education team at You Need a Budget. I run a small but mighty team of teachers, and we teach people how to do this, what I'm going to talk to you about today. But I usually teach from behind a computer online because we run a lot of free workshops. So I never get to look at people in the eye that I'm talking to, so this is really, really a treat for me. So our topic today is gain total control of your money. Anyone want to venture to guess the most important word in the title? Hint, it's not money. Control, yeah. It's definitely control. But what I want you to know about control is not really the end result that we're after. Control is the means to an end. What we're really after is confidence. See if I can get this to cooperate with me today. Right? We want confidence. We want to know I'm going to be able to pay my phone bill. I'm going to be able to buy the groceries I need. I'm going to have the money for the vacation for next summer. We're really after confidence. But it's definitely not cooperating here. It was working fine 2 minutes ago. I think it froze on me. Let me try again. Let's try it again. There we go. Okay. So again, we're after confidence. But we need control in order to have confidence, in order to get that confidence. So how do we get control? We have to back up one more step to clarity. Boy, it's really going to be, there we go. No? All right, it might just be me. We'll have to see how it goes. So if I have clarity, then I can take control. If you tell me where the fire is, I'll be able to put the fire out, right? So I'm going to circle back to a lot of these concepts today as we go through it because it really is about clarity, control, and confidence. And that leads me to the most commonly asked question about money that we all ask ourselves all the time. Can I afford this? If I buy this, will I have the money for that? Or if I buy that, will I be in trouble and not be able to pay the light bill, right? We're always struggling with. This question is a cry for clarity. It's almost rhetorical, right? What you're really saying is, I don't think I have the money for this. That's what you're really saying, right? So what do we do when we ask, can I afford this? We have to look to some place to answer the question. So where does everybody look? Everybody looks at the bank balance. Raise your hand if you've ever done this. My hand is up, so I'm first, okay? I used to poll people about this in classes, and everybody does this. Everybody checks the bank balance. But the bank balance is really sort of like this box right here. Does the black box know how much money I need to spend on groceries? Do I have it? Does the black box know what I'm going to do when my dog gets sick and I have an emergency trip to the vet, right? The checking account balance doesn't give us any information about that. Let me prove my point a little bit here. You tell me yes or no. Just feel free to yell out, okay? I have $1,500 in my checking account. Can I spend $200 on groceries? It depends. Can I buy a $400 iPhone? Maybe, maybe not, right? We don't have clarity. That's what the problem is right here. We don't have clarity. So most people make decisions like this, right? Honey, can you just log into the checking account? I need to pay the phone bill. I need to see how much we have in there. We're depending on this resource that doesn't have any of the information that we need. So I'm going to propose a different solution. And this is definitely freezing on me, so I'm going to stand over here if that's okay. And this is the first rule of our method. We call it Rule 1, give every dollar a job. And we have 4 rules I'm going to talk to you about today. And that's sort of the method behind everything that we do. So with Rule 1, what we're going to do is we're going to be purposeful. We're going to be intentional. We're going to decide what we're going to do with the money before we spend a dime. So let's go back to my $1,500. And now let's make some decisions. Now the question is a little bit different, okay? But first I want to be really clear about one thing, because this trips up a lot of people with Wind Up when they get started. This $1,500, I'm talking about money that I actually have in the bank. I'm not talking about the birthday check I hope I'm going to get from my grandmother. I'm not talking about that raise that we might get, or the bonus, or that extra paycheck. Just the money that we have on hand. And a lot of times for folks, that can really leave you feeling, it gives you a feeling of scarcity, like that's not enough. How can I possibly set up a budget? And I've had people look at me and say, Erin, how can I set up a budget? I literally have $60. That's all I have. But the decisions that you make about that money, I would argue, are the best, most important decisions you need to make. So the question is a little bit different. The question now is, what does this money need to do before I get paid again? And I take the $1,500 and I say, well, I need about $800 for rent. And so that's pretty good. That should take care of that. I also have to buy some gas for the car. So $50 for that. Going out to a movie with a friend this week, so I'm going to tuck aside $20 for that. Groceries, perfect. Sushi, priorities. And the phone, right? So there. And at this point, when I see that zero, every single dollar has a job. I've told my money what to do. I have clarity. I have control. I've taken control. This is, by the way, I haven't spent any money yet. This is just sort of the planning phase. And every time we put people through this process, through this exercise of taking what they have and deciding what they need that money to do first, everybody feels better. You know, years ago, I coached a woman. She was in a terrible financial situation. They'd lost an income due to an illness in the family, and she was getting 20 credit calls a day. And I walked her through this. We said, what have you got? I got her set up. Let's give every dollar a job. And at the end of the call, I said, well, how are you feeling? And she said, you know, I really thought I was going to be in a fetal position sobbing at the end of this call, but I feel better. Because she had clarity, right? She had clarity. She took control of the situation. And that's what we're after. So now if we go back and ask that question, can I spend $100 on groceries? Absolutely. You don't have any, there's no lack of clarity here now. We're absolutely sure. Can I spend $50 at the movies? No, right? Instantly you know, okay? And that's what we're after. We're after that clarity. And it came from the scarcity of only working with the $1,500, okay? Has anyone ever seen the Jerry Seinfeld show? There was an episode where he rented a car. Have you ever seen this episode? He's made a reservation to rent a car. Some people are laughing. Maybe you've seen it. And he goes up to the counter and he's like, I'm here. I've got a reservation for a car. And they're like, oh, let me look you up. She looks him up in the system and she says, I can see your reservation, but we don't have any more cars. And he says, well, what do you mean? I made a reservation. And she goes, well, I know, but we ran out of cars. And he's like, well, that's what the reservation does. It keeps the car here. Anybody can take reservations, right? That's how I feel about working only with the money that you have. Anybody can imagine more money. I mean, I could create a great budget if I just imagined if I won the lottery, right? But that doesn't really do me any good. It's that forecasting. It doesn't get you out of the decisions that you have to make about the money you have right now. Even if I made a budget hoping that I won the lottery, I still have to make decisions about the money that's in the bank right now so that I don't get out of that. Imagining more money doesn't eliminate those decisions. It does eliminate the clarity. You know, we see this where people will add money to their budget that hasn't quite arrived yet in the bank, and they'll have these, more money in one, area of their budget than they do in the bank. And I'll say, well, can you really spend this money? Well, no, I don't have it in the bank. So now you don't have any clarity. And that's what we really want to make sure that we hang on to, okay? So, rule one, give every dollar a job. I have more control. Do I have total control? Not quite. It's a long presentation, right? So you know there had to be more coming, right? So here's where we get to the next level of control here. Think about this for a second. Please tell me the date and amount of your next car repairs. Anybody know when your car is going to break down? Nobody knows. Today? Is it today? Right. But yet every single car needs repairs at some point. They all need that. These are less predictable. And I think a lot of times what happens is people throw up their hands and they're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm just going to, cross my fingers and hope for the best. I don't know if everybody can see this over here, but I have some Legos. I'll try to hold up for those in the back. So I want you to imagine each stack of these Legos, this represents my monthly expenses. This is what I think. If you ask anybody, hey, what are your monthly expenses? People are going to say, well, I got to pay the phone bill. They're going to list all the things that they pay every monthly. What they won't remember is the car repair, which just comes out of nowhere. What they won't think about is that time your dog got into something and had to go to the vets. And people seem to always be surprised by Christmas, okay? So it's the same day every year. It's totally predictable. So this is what happens is we get blindsided by these unexpected expenses, but they're not really unexpected. We really do know that they're coming, okay? And when you don't have the money, and that happens to you, the car breaks down, the dog gets sick, what do? Anybody? You don't have the money, what are you gonna do? You're gonna turn to debt. And that's where a lot of people jump when they don't have the money set aside. What happened to that money? It escaped because you didn't have clarity, you didn't take control. How many times have you ever said, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't spent the money on that whatever, because now I need the money for this, right? We all have had those kind of regrets. We've all had those moments where we wish you could turn back time a little bit. So we're going to be a little better with this with our second rule, which is called embrace your true expenses. We call them true expenses because they're real. It's going to happen. Your car will break down. So what I want people to do instead is get my Legos out here, is we're going to take these expenses and we're going to start saving a little bit every month. We're going to treat them like monthly bills, but the spending won't happen every month. So I'm just going to take this money for the car repair, add it to every single month. I'm going to set a little bit of money aside. You can see on my example up there, it was $50 every month for Christmas. And I can do the same thing here. And this money builds up over time. I was one of those people, I don't know about any of you, but I did a pretty good job paying my bills before I found YNAB, but I always had like $3.11 in the bank the day before payday, and I always felt like, oh good, it's positive. I'm doing well, you know, but then these kind of things would happen, and I never had any money. But then I started tucking money aside for these things, and even Christmas, and the money doesn't get spent right away. This is my last little one here. So you can see my vet bill money, my car repair money, my Christmas money at the top there. Oh, keep these in order. Oh, see what I'm doing. And every month that's going to go by, as I started doing this, I wouldn't spend the Christmas money, obviously not in January, unless it was a really good sale. So this money gets spent. This money does not get spent, the money for the vet bill, the car repair, Christmas, whatever you're saving for. So it gets tucked on to the next month. This money gets spent. You see what happens? I'm not going to go through the whole exercise, but that money just stays with me through time and moves forward, and when I get to Christmas, I just have the money. I have to tell you, the first time you have the money for a big car repair, you know what the mechanic's face looks like when they're about to break bad news? When he comes out and he's like, okay, you need 2 tires. I really need 4 tires though, don't I? You know, and he's just trying to like couch this the best way he can. And I'll say, well, how much is it going to be, Barry? And he says, well, to do everything, $700. And I'll be just like, do it. That just feels so amazing. And to know that it didn't impact groceries, it didn't impact dining out, it didn't take money from my vacation for the summer. I just had the money for the car repair. Wonderful feeling, I got to tell you. So you've made it through 2 rules here. Before we move on from rule 2, I think it's time for cute puppy photos. I know, right? So that's my dog, Charlie. And that is the picture that made me decide this one. And I have to tell you, I taught high school music for like 20 years, and I couldn't have a dog. I just didn't have time. And I always wanted a dog because we had dogs growing up. And I said, there's going to be a point in my life when I'm going to get my dog. So this was back in 2011 when I decided that I was ready. I got to be over here by this. And so I saved up for him for a year. He was a true expense for me. There was literally a line in my budget, new puppy. And the nice thing about being really purposeful, we were talking about being purposeful and really being proactive, is anytime something would happen and I'd be tempted to use some money from my budget for something else, I'd look at the new puppy category and I'd think, well, if I take that money, I'm not going to get my puppy. So I didn't touch it, It really protected that money. This was a personal true expense. Some of you may not want a puppy, but whatever it is, whether it's a fleet of snowmobiles, a trip to the Bahamas, whatever your thing may be. So this is Charlie today. I know. And this is a picture of us. He'll be 7 in June. on a hike. I do a lot of long distance hiking on the Appalachian Trail, and he hikes with me a lot. This is up in Grafton Notch State Park up in Maine. Now I can kind of predict your dinner time conversations tonight. How was that budgeting presentation? She showed us a lot of pictures of her dog. But if you look at this picture, this is kind of there's a really serious reason why I chose this. Are you thinking about money? Because it's not about money. It's not really gain total control of your money, right? It's gain control of your life. This is about what's important to me. This is one of the things that's really important to me. I wanted a dog for so long. To be able to have that time come around in the summer when it was time and just have the money for not just the adoption fees, but you know, the checkup and you got to get the fancy leash and the toys, right? And I just had all the money for that. So if you're thinking about, oh, she's just trying to get me to budget for car repairs and to be super responsible. Well, sure, we should do those things, right? But I want you to get the things that are important to you. We work hard for money. It should do the things we want it to do. And with this rule, I've really been able to kick it up a notch for things like this. And that ends the cute puppy photos. So Rule 2 gives us a little bit more control because now I can predict these non-monthly expenses. And by the way, they are more predictable. One thing I've learned from doing this for years is that I can pretty much tell you what I need to be setting aside for car repairs every year. I pretty much know now because I have context. You know, I have all those records and I have context. I can see what I've been spending. So now, has anyone here ever heard of Murphy's Law? Can anyone recite it? Does anyone know, like, anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment in the worst possible way? So I'm sure this will resonate with you a little bit. This is Murphy's Law of car repairs. If you manage to save $500 for the car repair, it will be $600, right? This happens with, and it can happen with any part of your budget, right? Groceries. Have you ever thought, oh man, what? I said we're gonna spend $600, how did we spend $7, right? This is just normal life happening, okay? What you really need is a way of dealing with this. And that's what we use our third rule for. It's called Rule 3, roll with the punches. This is about adjusting your strategy. Okay, it's gonna turn you into an excellent strategy game player. This is my favorite rule. This is my favorite rule because this builds in some flexibility. So if you think about it, most people think of a budget as something really rigid. Have you ever heard that phrase, stick to the budget? You've heard that phrase, right? Don't do that. That's no fun, right? It's not effective. But let's apply that rigid thinking for a second to the most popular strategy game of all time, tic-tac-toe. So we're gonna play a little imaginary game back and forth, okay? I'm gonna go first, and I get to do whatever I need to do to win the game, okay? So player 2, we can imagine it could be you. The rules are a little different in my version here. Player 2 has to pick their 4 spots on the board before the game starts. And they're not allowed to make any changes once the game starts. So let's imagine that you're player 2, and you pick these spots. This is a solid strategy. Path to victory, right there. Looks pretty good. So let's mark those in gray so that we can remember where they are, okay? So now I don't know what you've picked, right? I don't know what player 2 has picked. So I come in strong, I go right for the center. Well, shoot, now I've just taken your only path to victory. At this point, the best player 2 can hope for is to just tie, right? So you have to pick one of your predetermined spots, so you pick down there. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go here. So now you can see I am one move from winning, and player 2 can do nothing because they have to stick to the plan they had at the beginning, right? So then you pick one of your predetermined spots, and then boom, I win. So the problem here, we could have played this out any number of ways, right? It's tic-tac-toe. There's 9 spots there. I could have picked any number here. But look back at the original plan. This wasn't a bad strategy. This wasn't the problem. The problem was not being allowed to make any adjustments as the game was unfolding. That's the problem, right? So if you think about it, that kind of rigidity is actually really fragile. It's a really fragile strategy, and we don't want things to be fragile with our money, okay? This is why trees bend in the wind. That's how they stay standing, okay? So we want a more flexible strategy, and that's what Rule 3 does. So go back to our budget here. So let's say that I had this $30 set aside for sushi, and this was just, just wanted some cheap takeout sushi. And then I found out that my old college roommate is coming into town, and I haven't seen her in 10 years. And we love to go out for sushi, so I want to take her out and treat her since she's coming into town. And that's not going to be enough. So what am I going to do? Well, I look at my budget. I can't take it out of rent. I could, but probably not a good idea, right? Certain things I can't touch. But you know what? I could say to myself, you know what? I can wait on the phone. This phone's okay. I can probably wait till next month and get the phone. So I'm just going to take $70 out of there, and I move it over to the sushi category, and now I'm all set. The information changed. I didn't know my friend was coming into town when I made the original plan, right? But now I do, so I just make an adjustment. This is how you find the $100 for the car repair, right? You're not failing at budgeting when you do this. You are succeeding, okay? If I say, well, I'm going to go to the beach on Saturday. I'm going to go to the beach, and I'm just going to lay out in the sun for the day. I'll bring the dog, right? We'll just hang out at the beach. If I wake up Saturday morning and it's raining, I'm not going to say, well, I guess we're just going to have to sit out in the rain for a while today. Like, you would change your mind because the information changed, right? So do the same thing with your budget. Now, I want to tell you a story about this. This was one of those pivotal moments for me in my journey with YNAB. This is a story about a MacBook Pro, a cat named Henry, and a glass of water. Yeah. By the way, the first time I told this story, someone said, did you keep the cat? Yes, I did. So I left my house one night, I left my laptop open, and I left a glass of water next to it. And Henry loved to try to drink my water. He seemed to like the fresh water that was in my glass more than what was in his bowl. Maybe you have a cat that does this. So I left in a hurry. I come home, the computer it's soaking wet. I think I went through all 5 stages of grief in like 3 minutes, So, the thing is, the big problem for me was I didn't have any money set aside for a new computer. This is a big punch. This is a lot of money, right? So I went to bed that night. I felt really defeated, but I did know in my mind that I had just saved a $1,000 emergency fund. They tell you to do that, right? It's a good idea. And it took me like a year. And I just went to bed thinking, I'm just going to have to take that whole emergency fund to pay for this computer. So I got up in the morning and I drove to the Apple store. It's like an hour away. I'm just beating myself up all the way up in the car. I got the computer. It was like $1,300. And I got home and I got everything set up and I'm like, okay, I gotta fix this in my budget. And I opened my budget and I'm about to scroll down to the line that says emergency fund. And on my way down, my eyes noticed my car repair line. And there was like $700 in there. Car's okay. I don't want to drain it maybe, but I could take a little bit. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like half of that money I took. And I'm like, okay, we're off to a pretty good start here. Let me just look around the budget. There was a couple $100 in clothing. Didn't have to buy clothing, I kid you not, I can remember where I was sitting. Like, I found all $1,300 in 10 minutes, and I never touched my emergency fund line. I could have, would have been a valid choice, right? But that's when I realized the power of these rules of being really purposeful and really intentional in saying every dollar is a job to do for me. I am the boss. You guys are going to buy me groceries. You guys are going to pay my mortgage. Being really purposeful. Because of that, my money was doing what I wanted it to do. Because I had set money aside for clothing, for car repairs, for all those things, I had some breathing room in my budget so that when this punch happened, I was able to roll with it. And I couldn't believe it. And the interesting thing about it is I was so surprised. Why was I surprised? Because the whole way driving up to the store, there was never a moment in my mind when I thought, I wonder if there's enough money in my checking account to cover this. Didn't even occur to me. I was not thinking, maybe I'll have to put this on a credit card. I knew I had money. I just knew that I didn't have any money set aside for this specific thing. I do now, by the way. That's an important one, computer replacement, right? So what was I feeling there? Why was I feeling so broke? I was YNAB broke. This is a wonderful thing to be. That YNAB broke is when you have thousands of dollars in your checking account and your friend says, hey, do you want to go out to eat? And you go, I don't have any money for dining out. Because it wasn't as important as the other things in my budget, right? This is different from regular broke. Regular broke is when you just don't have any money. Regular broke is what I was before YNAB, when I would have $3.11 in my checking account, okay? But now I'm YNAB broke, and it's just such a much better place to be. So this gives us more control, right? I have control in that I tell my money what to do, I'm setting money aside for later expenses, and I make a change whenever I feel like I need to, you know? That example I told you about the sushi, that's deliberate. Like, I want you to know it's not just about, oh, well, the car repair was over. It's like, no, the change here was, it's important to me to be able to see my friend that I haven't seen in a while. Like, so it's not just about these obligations we tend to think of, right? Now, I mentioned, I'm going to switch gears a little bit more to the last step of how we take control. And I want to go back to hiking. I told you I hike a lot with my dog. I have a bucket list item of being able to hike the whole Appalachian Trail. So before I show you this slide, if you don't know, the Appalachian Trail runs from Georgia, southeastern United States, up to Maine, and the northern terminus is at Mount Katahdin. The area 100 miles south of Mount Katahdin is called the 100-mile wilderness. And when you're about to enter it, you see this sign. Let me read it to you, because it's a really fun, scary sign. There are no places to obtain supplies or get help until Abol Bridge 100 miles north. Do not attempt this section unless you have a minimum of 10 days supplies, they're talking about food, and are fully equipped. This is the longest wilderness section of the entire AT, and its difficulty should not be underestimated. I love the good hiking at the bottom. It's like, you might die, have fun, you know. So this is what this looks like on a map. You start down here, this is a little bit cut off because of the projector, but you start down at Lake Hebron. There's a couple of little mountain ranges through there. Now you might be thinking, okay, they say 10 days, 100 miles. How many miles a day? 10, right? Well, this is what the trail's like through here. So it's not like your public park where they're really well groomed. It's really hard to get out here. It really is remote. So in Maine, our philosophy is, look, you can go up the mountain if you want to, but you have to climb over this pile of rocks, okay? So 10 days of food is actually quite a bit to carry. I'll tell you, the most I've ever carried is 7. Food's heavy, you know, so it's hard. I don't even know if I could go through there in 10 days, to tell you the truth. If I was going to do it, I'd probably want like 14. So I don't want to have to carry all that food. So what's happened is a lot of companies have kind of cropped up, and they will do what's called a food drop for you. They'll drop a food cache. So like you can get one here at Gulf Haggis. Gulf Haggis is a little it's a parking area there. You can go in and day hike to the waterfalls with your kids. And then this is a logging road up here, Joe Mary Road near Joe Mary Lake, and you can get a food drop there. So you can say, look, I'm leaving on Saturday from here. Can you please set some food out for me on Tuesday morning? And they'll go in there and they'll put it in a safe container and tell you where to find it. And so you're like, great, I'm hiking along, and you just know the food's going to be there, okay? So what on earth does this have to do with money? This makes me think a lot of the paycheck to paycheck cycle, right? Because what are we doing when we are living paycheck to paycheck? You have all these expenses piling up, right? Another bill arrives. And what are you waiting for? The money. You're waiting for the paycheck to arrive. You want to pay the phone bill. You want to pay the student loan. You want to buy groceries, but you're waiting. You're in this reactive position where you're waiting for that money to arrive. And the money arrives, and then you're all good. So with this last rule, what I want to do is flip this on its head. I want you to have the money out there in the future waiting for you, like the food was waiting up the trail. We want the money out there so that when the bills come in, you just pay them, no big deal, okay? And the way that we do this is we want you to get a month ahead. We want you setting money aside for the next month before that month even gets here. Now, people usually say, Erin, I spent all that money. So how do I do this, right? It feels insurmountable. It did to me when I got started. I felt like, you know, when I found YNAB, it was 2006. I had some credit card debt, sent me searching for a budget. And I found this, and I read through the rules, and I thought, this is crazy. I have to pay this debt off. I have to do these other things. I can't get a month ahead. That's just ludicrous. It's not. I got there. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I did it by following those rules. I gave every dollar a job. All of a sudden, my rate of spending started to slow. I didn't feel restricted, by the way. It's easy to feel like, oh, you're telling me to spend less. I'm going to feel restricted. You won't feel restricted if your money is doing what you want it to do. When I found out, oh, I'm blowing a lot of money over here, I don't want that to happen. Oh, I'm paying for this subscription, And that doesn't really matter to me. I'd rather have my money doing something else. You don't feel restricted. You just feel in control. So what happens is you follow these rules, you start setting money aside, and you'll get paid someday near the end of the month, maybe the 26th or 27th, and you'll be finishing out your budget maybe for April, and there'll be $100. And you'll be like, well, I don't think I need that for April. So I'm just going to start budgeting for the next month. I'm just going to start setting money aside for May. Maybe you get a little bit of a head start on May's rent, right? And this will snowball. It gets easier and easier. And the next month, maybe you've got a little bit more left. And you go, gosh, I don't think I need that for May. I'll set that money aside for June, okay? And what eventually happens is you do get to a point where you are completely a month ahead. When it happened to me, it was April or May when I noticed it. I was teaching school at the time, and I got paid every other week. And I could see on the calendar, oh, I'm going to have 3 paychecks in June. And I think I can use that last paycheck when it arrives, not before. I think I can use that paycheck to finish budgeting for July. And that's what I did. So I'll never forget this. When July 1st rolled around, I looked at my budget, and all the money I needed for every single thing in July was already in the bank, already dutifully assigned to everything. I could buy groceries. I didn't have to wait and go grocery shopping with everybody else on Friday when they get paid. I could go Tuesday night when there's nobody in the store, right? Because I'm not waiting for any money. The money was just out there waiting for me to get to July 1st, and then I was able to spend. It's beautiful. And once you get through that initial climb, once you get through that first month of turning the corner on that, what happens is then my money in July, it still showed up. And then imagine being able to look at your money and say, look, guys, I'm glad that you showed up. Thanks for being here. I don't need you right now. Could you please go over to August and wait for me? That's control, right? So the money's out there in August waiting. It does all the thing. I get paid in August. That takes care of September. And if you're somebody who's on a really variable income, you might even decide to get another month ahead. We have people that do that. Depends on your situation. It takes most people, in case you're wondering, 4 to 6 months. We've surveyed people on this to get to that point where they've finally gotten a month ahead. Full disclosure, it took me a year. The year that I was trying to get a month ahead, I had a car die and a computer die. So it took me a little bit longer. But I could never go back. I could never go back. Now think about this for a second, because we measure this. We're an education company. We sell software to keep the lights on. So we measure your money, how old it is, right? If you think about it, think about this question. You don't have to answer out loud. You can if you want to. How long could you go before cashing your next check? In other words, if you got paid today, how long could you walk around with that check in your pocket before you had to run to the bank and cash it and start paying for things, right? So there's probably some kind of answer in your head right now. Maybe it's a couple of days. Maybe it's a week, right? Some people will tell me I would be running to the bank, right? I couldn't wait very long at all. So we measure that in days. And we want you to get to a point where you can wait 30 days. That's the goal. That's how you get a month ahead. So that's the name. The fourth rule is called age your money. If a dollar is born to you on Friday, you get paid on Friday, that's the dollar's birthday in your life, and you have to spend that dollar on Saturday, that dollar is 1 day old. It's baby money. You don't want to send it out into the world until it's learned some things, right? So it's 1 day old. But if I can hang on to that money for 30 days, I'm sending wiser money, right, out into the world. So that's what we're shooting to people to do. And I looked this morning, because usually when I do a presentation, somebody will always ask me, how old is your money, Erin? And now this is prefaced with, I'm very risk averse. So I'm actually budgeted out a couple months, just how my brain works. You don't have to be that way. I have a very healthy emergency fund balance in my budget. My money was 147 days old this morning when I looked. So what does that mean? That means that when I go to the airport later today to fly home, and I decide to buy a slice of pizza, I'll be spending a dollar that I earned almost 5 months ago. So I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, okay? And by the way, it doesn't have anything to do with how much money you make. It just has to do with the relationship between how much money you bring in and how fast you let that money go out. If you can slow that down, slow down that spending, it gets a little bit easier. Is that making sense? Okay. So it's 4 rules, and I'm happy to take some questions. I think we'll have some time for questions. Rule 1, every dollar gets a job. You're in charge, be in control, tell your money what to do. Rule 2, embrace your true expenses. Set money aside not just for non-monthly bills, but for the other things you want in life too, okay? I'm also a quilter, so I have a quilting category and I'm saving up, for those kind of things, right? Rule 3, roll with the punches. If you need to make a change to your budget because you deem that you need to make a change, go for it, right? And then try to age that money so that you're living on money that's at least 30 days old. And really, this is a little bit of a secret here, but all of this is really about rule 1, right? Some dollars are for monthly expenses. I'm going to give them that job. Some dollars are for non-monthly expenses, so they get that job. That's rule 2. Some dollars are for next month. That's rule 4. And some dollars need to be reprioritized. So that's rule 3. You see how it's all derivatives of the same thing? But that's basically the gist of it. So like I said, we are an education company. We sell software to keep the lights on. We have a web app. We have apps for the iPhone, Android, and an iPad. I didn't show you any of that today because I feel like that would be the easy way to do this, but not necessarily helpful to you because you could do the method that I just described with paper and pencil. You could, right? It's that the method is what really matters. And I find that when people understand the rules and the method and what we're trying to teach there, that when they make that leap over to the software, it's a lot easier to understand. Because we built it to implement these rules, okay? I'm happy to answer any questions if you've got them. Yeah?
What do you think best to do? Pay your bills with autograph or you mail payment?
So she's asking about, should I mail in a paper check or should I set everything on auto pay? How many of you wish you could put everything on auto pay? That's what I was like. Everybody talked about auto pay. I always wanted to do it. I didn't dare to because I didn't have clarity. I wasn't sure if the money was going to be there. I'm like, well, what if I set it up for auto pay on the phone on the 17th and there's not enough money in there on the 17th, right? That's the danger. But if I'm a month ahead or 2 months ahead, it's not a problem. So I think, to answer specifically what you should do, I think auto pay is great when you get to that point where you can confidently know those bills will be covered. Because that's bookkeeping, right? The process of paying your bills is boring. And so great that I'm never thinking about that now. I just know they're all set. I've got, the money's in there a month ahead, I'm all set, So when you get to that point, I think we remove all the tedium. If I'm gonna think about my money, when I sit down to think about my budget, I'm not thinking about which account is this coming out of, and I don't wanna think about that. I wanna think about what do I want my money to do? I wanna get a puppy. I want to go on a vacation or I want to whatever, So hope that answered your question. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah?
There's different strategies for dealing with current debt.
Mm-hmm.
What is your recommendation?
Yeah. Right. So the question was, what do you recommend as a debt pay down strategy? We recommend paying down the debt that has the smallest balance first. Now, I say that with the caveat that if you come to me and say, well, I've got a credit card with 29% interest, okay, well, maybe you should attack that one, right? You know your financial situation. But the thinking behind it is that you'll make big improvements in your cash flow quickly. If you have a card that only has a couple $100s in debt on it and you pay that one off first, well, that's some money that you now can reprioritize, right? So it's that snowball approach. But what I tell people is budget first for the things you have to pay every month. That's number 1. And that includes the minimum payment on your debt. Then, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but then before you start throwing everything at the credit card or whatever the debt may be, start saving for your true expenses. Car repairs, Christmas. And people say, but why? Why wouldn't I want to attack? Because I did this. I wanted to attack the credit card debt. When I went looking for a budget, I was like, that's it. I'm done. This debt is going. I'm going to take care of this. And so that's where my focus was. And so for months, that first year I was using the budget program, I would throw every extra penny I could at the debt. Is this resonating with anybody? Right? I'm going to get this gone. So I had no money for true expenses. And then my car broke down. And then what did I have to do? You have to put on the credit card. So by saving for true expenses, that's the first step in paying down debt. You have to turn the tide. It's really, you could say that rule 2 is debt prevention strategy, really. When I had money for those things, I didn't have to lean on the credit. So then once I've done that, I would look through the budget and go, okay, now I've got a plan for all those immediate bills. I've got a plan for all my true expenses. Do I have any other wiggle room? Is there any other money left that I can reprioritize? Then I would start saying, oh, it looks like I can afford to send another 100 or 200 to whatever credit card you choose, smallest balance, either way. And that way, and then after you've got that plan in place, then I would work on getting a month ahead. That would be how I would recommend approaching it. Other questions? Yeah.
So I have, I do a lot of financial literacy in
Oh,
my
awesome.
position. And the hardest thing is I work with a lot of low-income families or no-income families,
Yep.
victims and such. So when I sit down and try to talk with them about this, and they go, well, here's my income, here's my debt, I don't even make enough to pay
Right.
1 month, let alone
Right.
save money.
Right.
Do you have any suggestions as to, I guess, I don't have a hard time responding to
Yeah,
that.
it's a hard one. I would say that one thing you do with this program is it also helps you track your spending. So we didn't talk about bank accounts today, but you can add your bank accounts, enter your spending on the go. We can connect to your bank and pull in transactions. And I do believe that there are people who are in situations where, expenses exceed income, and the only other choice is to increase income. But for a lot of people, I think there are places they can cut, but if they're not tracking in a budget like this, then they're not going to see those places. I thought I had cut all spending until I started doing this and realized where the money was leaking out, and I was able to identify places to cut. There did come a point on my debt paydown journey. I was maybe a year and a half in, and I just thought, this isn't going as fast as I want it to go. And at that point, I went through the budget one night and I was like, maybe I can find some more. I'm like, no, I can't cut. No, I can't take any. And then I realized it was almost like my budget was talking to me saying, Erin, you need more money. And so for a couple of summers, I was a music teacher. I did music lessons out of my house and brought in some more money. But it will always come down to cutting spending or increasing income. I always tell people to go after the spending first because I think there's more there than people realize. And when you track it all, then you know. Okay, hope that helps a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes.
So at what point would you consider investing? So your security capital set aside.
Mhm.
What would you consider going?
After I was a month ahead. And I think, it's a hard question to answer specifically because I can't see all of the details about your financial situation. Sometimes people will ask and it's like, if I had known one other piece of the puzzle, I might have said something different. But I think I would want to be debt-free, a month ahead, have money for true expenses, have things kind of humming along on autopilot. And then that's when I started to become a lot more aggressive in trying to save for later. Yeah. Yep.
Sorry if this is inappropriate. What does it cost for YNAB? Is it a
Sure.
monthly fee?
Nope, it's not inappropriate to ask. It's $84 a year. It's like $7 a month is how it works out. Yeah. There's a 34-day free trial to give it a spin. Yeah.
Can we get that today? Like, how do we get that?
You just go to youneedabudget.com and there's a sign up button, I'm pretty sure, right? Yep.
I sure hope so.
This is Jesse Meekum. He's our founder. He's sitting in today. So, yeah.
Or, sorry, second question, for a variable income,
Mm-hmm.
how do you budget, like, your minimum that you would get?
Yeah, it's so the variable income people have my heart because I just can't. I've always been on salary. I can't imagine. I would be, if it was me, I would probably be trying to at least nail down the true expenses that I really, the ones the puppy might have taken a back seat. Oh, that's painful to say. But the ones I really had to, immediate obligations. And I might say, I need to get 2 or 3 months out on those things before I feel secure. I think it depends on what you do and how often you're paid. If I was a real estate broker and I was paid maybe, and I only could really count on a sale every 3 months, then I'd want to have at least my obligations covered for 3 months out. You know what I mean? But the great thing about the program is you can work toward that in any way that you want, right? So you can, if you add money that you don't have into the budget, you're going to lose that clarity. It's so much peace of mind to know my rent is covered for the next 3 months. So I would work on finding out how far out do I need to go for me to feel comfortable. And I think that line is different for everybody. We recommend a minimum of a month, 30 days ahead, but you can go as far as you want. Okay? Other questions? Okay, we're
Can
good?
I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
David Dancer.
Hi.
When I think of YNAB, this is not a
endorsement or anything like that. We're trying to be non-commercial here, but YNAB is an education company, really, to me. They have budgeting software, but I would recommend you engage on Facebook with YNAB. There's a whole community of budget people talking budget stuff on Facebook with YNAB. And then Jesse has a spectacular podcast in which he discusses not only budget, he just talks about financial capability issues in general. He talks about things like behavioral economics and why we predictably make bad choices that are really to our detriment. He brings in experts from different areas in the realm of financial capability. And so check out Jesse's podcast, check out YNAB's Facebook page, and
We also run free workshops. You don't have to have even signed up. And our teachers will take you through, what I didn't do today would take you through the software because I wanted to really sell you on the method. But they can walk you through setup, credit cards, all that stuff, debt pay down, variable income. We cover all that in our free workshops. So, yeah.
There are several other budgeting tools
Mhm.
out there that don't charge, but
Mhm.
are free. What would you say are the differences between some things such as Mint or some of that?
Right. I-
Do you need that and why?
I haven't used a lot of them, to tell you the truth. My impression of Mint is that it tracks your spending, but it doesn't put you in control. And that's, I've seen, even my bank website will categorize my spending, and I'll look at it and go, well, that's wrong. But so I like the control that I have with this. I mean, this purposefully titled Gain Control. I mean, there's a little bit, the saying, you get what you pay for. I think there's something to that. But this method is free. You can implement this, when I found it in 2006, it was a spreadsheet for Microsoft Excel, and it worked. And I had to enter everything in as a new, line. But I still got ahead that way because it was the method, the way of thinking behind it. So I think that's what separates us from the other places or the other companies, is that we are very intentional about this. This isn't something hacked together. Like, we believe in this. All the teachers who work for my team are all users whose lives were changed. And when we said, hey, we're hiring a teacher, they were like, oh my gosh, this changed my life. I want to teach other people about it. So I think it's the method that really sets us apart. So, last question.
So does it still sync with another person? So like a couple
Yeah. Yeah, she's asking about syncing, and this is the last cool thing I'll tell you about it is, you could have a Macintosh computer and an iPhone, and your spouse could have a Windows machine and an Android phone, and you can all access the same budget, and it will sync in real time. So you could be out shopping and see a transaction for gas enter if your spouse enters it on the go. So that's the other thing I think is it's great for communication, really keeping people on the same page. I think I have to let you go, but if anybody wants to come down and ask any other questions, I'm happy to answer. Yeah, thank you.